My name is Mila, and for 10 years, my parents expected me to send them money, and later, they even suggested I sell my newly purchased house to cover the cost of my father's medical treatment. When I declined, they turned up at my doorstep, prompting me to call the police. Despite these challenges, I recently achieved a lifelong dream. I bought my own apartment. Owning a place has always been my ultimate goal, especially since I never had my own room growing up in a low-income family. We faced numerous hardships because my parents were thrust into parenthood not from a desire for a child, but due to cultural pressures to conform to societal expectations. This led them to have me, their only child, born more from obligation than affection or preparedness. Financially, we were always on the brink, living in substandard, sometimes unsafe housing because it was all we could afford. Many nights, we went to bed hungry, and I wore secondhand clothes that were often in poor condition. My father worked in a shoe factory with meager pay and battled a gambling addiction, while my mother occasionally worked as a cleaner. Unfortunately, they often prioritized their personal indulgences over our family's basic needs. This left little for essentials, let alone support for me. At school, I felt like an outsider. My worn clothes and untidy appearance made me a target for bullying. After persistent pleading, my parents reluctantly bought me glasses, which were soon broken by my classmates. Fearing blame from my parents, I didn't tell them what happened. Thankfully, a compassionate teacher noticed and discreetly helped me get a new pair without informing my parents. Despite the adversities, owning my apartment marks a significant personal victory. It's not just a place, it's a symbol of my independence and resilience, achieved through years of struggle and determination. Throughout my childhood and teenage years, I was surrounded by an atmosphere of discontent at home. My parents were trapped in an unhappy marriage, burdened by their own life's disappointments, which often spilled over onto me. My father was excessively harsh, scolding me for the slightest noises, creating an environment where I constantly felt as if I were treading on thin ice. Similarly, my mother exerted control over my social interactions, dictating which friends I could have, preferring those from upper-middle-class backgrounds, thinking it would benefit us socially and economically. They both had high expectations for me academically, seeing my success as their escape from poverty. This belief was so ingrained that my educational achievements became less about my personal growth and more about fulfilling their aspirations. They boasted about my grades and accolades to anyone who would listen, yet offered little emotional support or recognition for my efforts. When I earned a full scholarship to college, it seemed like a beacon of hope after years of familial pressure. My parents viewed this opportunity as their ticket to a better life. However, college brought a new perspective and freedom from their oppressive expectations. For the first time, I experienced life without their overbearing presence, which led me to reassess my obligations towards them. I began distancing myself, declining their visits to college, and spending holidays with friends in nurturing environments, starkly different from my own home. When I started working part-time, I kept it a secret to avoid their demands for money. Their reaction to my independence was harsh. They resorted to insults and threats when I refused to financially support them. This journey of self-discovery and establishing boundaries has been challenging but necessary. It's a testament to the resilience required to forge one's path in the face of familial obligations and the quest for personal happiness and fulfillment. After my college graduation, I seized the opportunity to establish my independence by accepting a job in a different city and abruptly relocating there. I didn't inform my family, changed my phone number, and hoped to sever past ties to begin anew. Initially, the distance brought me a profound sense of relief and freedom, a feeling I cherished. Unfortunately, my tranquility was short-lived. One of my relatives disclosed my location, and my father managed to confront me at my new workplace. His unexpected appearance sparked anger within me. During our confrontation, he criticized my decision to cut off communication, insisting on the obligations I supposedly owed as his daughter. He argued that I should not abandon our family. Despite my clear expression of wanting no further contact, he observed my work environment and attire, concluding that I was financially well off and could afford to support them. Reluctantly, to avoid potential disruptions at work and embarrassment, I agreed under duress to send $900 monthly to keep them at bay. This arrangement has continued for 10 years. While the amount is financially insignificant to me now, it has been the price of my peace, keeping them from intruding further into my life. They still monitor my activities through social media and other family members, but they have not made additional demands. Recently, I purchased an apartment and decided to celebrate this significant achievement with a housewarming party. I chose not to invite my parents, a decision they learned about through social media, which led to a confrontational call from my mother. She accused me of neglecting them and not adhering to her expectations of parental relationships, which she claimed were fulfilled by other children towards their parents. Her words were laced with guilt and disappointment over my choices, questioning why I harbored such negative feelings toward them and could not reconcile with the past. Despite her emotional appeal, I remained firm, believing that the financial support I provided was more than sufficient involvement in their lives. Previously, I had often dismissed such conversations with my mother, citing busyness or a lack of patience for her lengthy talks. However, this call took an unexpected turn when she shared that my father had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 3 months earlier. This news caught me off guard. It was the first I had heard of his illness, and initially, I was skeptical of her claim. Over the years, my relationship with my parents had deteriorated to the point of estrangement, fueled by deep-seated resentment. Despite this, learning about my father's grave condition evoked a surprising wave of sympathy within me. My mother explained why they hadn't told me sooner. They felt guilty about the financial support I had been providing, which amounted to $900 a month. Both of my parents had only ever earned minimum wage, and without my financial help, they would have struggled even more, especially now with my father unemployed due to his illness. Their financial woes had deepened since my father's diagnosis, and my mother's part-time job was insufficient to cover their basic living expenses, let alone mounting medical bills. Desperate, she pleaded with me to visit, suggesting it might be my father's last chance to see me, his only child. Her words, laden with emotion, struck a chord with me, and for the first time in years, I felt a pang of guilt, not because I felt I owed them, but because I couldn't ignore the severity of the situation. After some reflection, I decided to give them one last chance, although I could not visit them due to work commitments. Instead, I arranged for them to come to my city. I booked bus tickets and a hotel room for them for one night, deciding against having them stay in my apartment as I wasn't ready for such intimacy. However, I invited them to my place for lunch to talk things over. On the day of their visit, I braced myself for any outcome. When I saw my father, his condition was palpable. He was frail, visibly exhausted, and struggled to walk. He presented me with his medical records and hospital bills, confirming the truth of my mother's words. There was no deceit in their plight. During our conversation, my father took the opportunity to apologize for the financial burden he had imposed on me over the years. His remorse was evident, and for a moment, I felt a sense of understanding and closure as we navigated this complex emotional landscape together. It seemed he might truly grasp the emotional toll his actions had taken on me. As we conversed about my life and career during their visit, my parents frequently expressed their pride in seeing me independently thriving in a luxurious apartment. They were amazed by the spacious, well-furnished setup I had all to myself, though they mentioned it seemed too large for just one person. My mom, seizing the opportunity, suggested she might stay a few days to explore the city, an idea I quickly dismissed. I reminded her of the hotel booking and bus tickets I had arranged for their brief visit, making it clear that any extension of their stay was not my responsibility. My mother was visibly upset by my response, and my father questioned why I couldn't show them more warmth, especially after years apart. He seemed to think my distant demeanor was unjustified. In a moment of raw honesty, I let my pent-up resentment show. I recounted the lack of emotional and material support from them during my upbringing, highlighting how they exploited my academic achievements for their own gain while offering little in return. Despite our strained relationship, I had still been financially supporting them with $900 monthly, an arrangement more about keeping them at a distance than nurturing any real connection. This financial support was my way of managing the drama from afar, ensuring they didn't disrupt the new life I had built, or expose my colleagues and friends to my deeply dysfunctional family background. After a tense lunch, I suggested they return to their hotel. However, my father wasn't ready to leave. He admitted the real reason behind their visit was not out of missing me, but because he was overwhelmed by his medical bills from cancer treatment. He implored me for additional financial help, his plea underscoring a continual pattern of only reaching out when in need. This confirmed my suspicions of their visit being motivated by more than just familial love. I clearly explained to him that I would not be doing that, as the money I was already sending them every month was quite generous. My father then pointed around my well-appointed apartment, remarking that if I could afford such a place, I should be able to manage his cancer treatment costs. He desperately told me that he had no one else to turn to but me. I responded that the costs of his medical bills were substantial, and even with my current job, it was impossible for me to pay them off. He then suggested that I could sell my apartment to fund his treatment, arguing that his health was more vital than any material possession and that helping him was the least I could do as his daughter. My mother also pleaded with me, tears in her eyes, promising that if I just cleared their medical debts, they would never ask for anything again. However, the sense of entitlement from my father's request, combined with my mother's dramatic appeal, left me momentarily speechless. It seemed they were never truly content. They kept asking for more, believing they had a right to my life's achievements, my stability, and even my home, as if these were theirs to claim whenever needed. Despite earlier apologies, this moment revealed the hard truth. They still didn't see me as an individual but rather as a resource to tap into whenever necessary. I wasn't even shocked. Deep down, I had suspected that this visit wasn't just about reconnecting but about what they could gain from me. My father's health crisis was just another leverage point for them. He had made his own life choices, spending years drinking and gambling, neglecting both his health and family. Why should I be responsible for cleaning up his mess? I had been financially supporting them for years. Why hadn't they saved any of it for emergencies like this? When I confronted them, my mother, somewhat flustered, tried to justify their actions by saying they had used the money for essentials like rent and groceries, which was understandable to some extent. However, she also confessed to spending part of it on travel. She argued that they deserved to enjoy life, having never really lived fully before my financial support made it possible. They assumed they would eventually move in with me as they aged, believing that as their child, I was obligated to care for them in their later years. Hearing this assumption was the last straw for me. I firmly told them that there was no guarantee I would take care of them in their old age, emphasizing that they needed to manage their expectations and responsibilities. Over the years, I made it clear that how they managed the money I gave them was their responsibility. I spoke plainly to them, explaining that their current financial troubles were a result of their own poor planning. I firmly stated that I would not provide any further financial support. My words were definitive and seemed to resonate deeply. As they grasped the seriousness of my stance, my parents attempted to reason with me. My father's temper escalated while my mother tearfully implored me to change my mind. However, I firmly told them that the discussion was over and asked them to leave my house. I even threatened to stop the $900 monthly support if they didn't comply. This silenced the room instantly. They realized I was not bluffing and that losing the financial support I was providing could be detrimental. Although visibly upset, they collected their belongings and left. Since their departure, I've confided in my boyfriend and a few friends. The feedback was consistent. Many felt I had been overly harsh, especially given my father's cancer diagnosis. They suggested I show more compassion, perhaps even assisting with some of his medical expenses. To address the questions many have posed about why I financially supported my parents for so long, I chose to give them money not out of obligation but to avoid the inconvenience of them reaching out to my colleagues or friends. The $900 was enough to keep them satisfied and at bay, which was easier than dealing with constant demands or confrontations. Despite my corporate success and the financial freedom from being child-free, I wanted peace. The reason I allowed their recent visit is because my father's health is declining, and I sensed it might be one of the last opportunities to express the unresolved feelings I harbored towards him and my mother. Despite their toxic behavior, they're still my parents. Part of me hoped they might have changed, or at least felt some regret about our strained relationship. It has been 1 week since I thought I had seen the last of them, but today they unexpectedly appeared at my doorstep. Despite my surprise, I only cracked the door to speak to them, refusing them entry. My mother began to speak. My parents had extended their visit to my city by a few days to explore more thoroughly. During their stay, they grew to love the city, appreciating it far more than their own, especially for its superior medical facilities. They visited a couple of clinics and consulted with doctors who offered hopeful treatments for my dad's cancer. My father shared that despite knowing I wanted to keep my distance, he saw this as his last opportunity for survival. He and my mom decided to stay and begin his treatment at one of the best hospitals here. He asked me to finance his medical care and requested either to stay with me or for me to arrange their accommodation, promising to move away once he recovered, thus lifting their burden from me forever. Shocked by his audacity, I recalled our past conversations where I had made it clear that they would need to cover their own expenses if they chose treatment in my city. I was astounded they expected my financial support. My mother became upset and threatened not to leave my doorstep if I refused to help, attempting to emotionally blackmail me. Fed up, I shut the door on them and called the police, reporting them for harassment. I wanted them to understand the seriousness of their actions, hoping to deter them from future coercion. The police took them into custody after they resisted and refused to leave my property. I also had to explain the situation to my neighbors, as the ordeal had disrupted our usually peaceful community. It was a mortifying reminder of the difficult relationship I have with my parents. After the incident, I sought legal counsel and obtained a restraining order against them, supported by video evidence of their threats. They were eventually released from jail, given it was their first offense, and were instructed by the police to cease their harassment. Following my lawyer's advice, I also stopped all financial support to them, recognizing that I had inadvertently enabled their toxic behavior for too long. I informed my boss about the situation to safeguard my job and ensure my career was not jeopardized by further disturbances from them. Ultimately, I've taken necessary steps to distance myself from my parents and secure my peace of mind. While the situation is less than ideal, I am relieved to have established clear boundaries to prevent any further emotional distress.